Hey everyone, this is Mia Horror Stories, and the title of today's horror story is The Last Recording from Room 6. For your comfort, the screen will stay black throughout the video, so you can relax without strain and just focus on the story. Make sure you stick around until the end. Sometimes the last few moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor flickered once, then again, just long enough to make the peeling paint along the ceiling look like it was poolsing. It wasn't late, only 7:30, but the quiet made it feel like midnight. A wheeled tray clattered somewhere down the hall, and faint voices leaked from the nurse's station. But otherwise, it was still. Too still. Jenna Cole adjusted the strap of her shoulder bag and stepped cautiously past room 5. She had been a medical transcriptionist for almost 4 years, mostly working nights, and she'd walked this corridor hundreds of times. Tonight felt different. She noticed the hum of the overhead ventilation, the faint chemical tang of disinfectant, and oddly the smell of something sweet, almost like burnt sugar, drifting from behind one of the closed doors. She paused, shaking it off. Hospitals had weird smells. That was normal. "Hey," a voice called, breaking the monotony. It was quiet, but carried an edge of forced cheer. Dr. Owen Blake leaned against the doorway of room 7, rubbing his temples like he'd been up too long. "You're late." "Only by 15 minutes, Jenna said, trying for casual. Her stomach did a little flip. She hated being late. She always hated it. Even when it was beyond her control, that little twinge of guilt never left. Owen pushed off the doorframe. He was tall, mid-30s, with the kind of calm face that made him easy to trust. He kept his hair cropped short and his scrubs neatly pressed. But Jenna had learned long ago that his easy confidence masked a kind of stubborn anxiety. He hated admitting when he didn't know something. He never let it show, though. "You already started on room 6, she asked, letting her gaze drift to the next door down the hall. It was unremarkable white, scuffed at the edges, but she felt the pull of it, like something just on the edge of attention. Owen shook his head. "Not yet. Patients here are all stable, but I don't know. Something felt off when I walked past. Maybe I'm just tired." "Probably," Jenna said. Her voice was calm, but her hands itched with unease. She had a knack for noticing things others overlooked. Sometimes that skill got her in trouble. Sometimes it kept her alive. They moved together down the hall. A faint beep came from a machine inside room 5. Then silence. Then the low murmur of a voice, soft, almost too low to hear. It stopped as soon as they got closer. "Did you hear that?" Jenna asked. Owen frowned. "Hear what?" She shook her head. "Never mind." Jenna had been feeling a little on edge all evening. There was nothing to pinpoint, nothing that screamed danger. But the sensation sat behind her ribcage like a small animal, restless. Her phone buzzed briefly in her bag, a muted vibration that echoed like a hiccup through the quiet. She pulled it out, a message from her sister, just a thumbs-up emoji. Small, meaningless. But for some reason, It made her tighten her grip on the strap. They stopped outside room 6. The door was slightly ajar, more than usual, and the soft hum from inside sounded irregular, like the heart of the room had skipped a beat. "You go first," Owen said, gesturing toward the room. He was trying to be casual, but the crease between his eyebrows betrayed him. Jenna glanced at the interior. The patient bed was empty, neatly made. A tray of medical supplies sat at the side. Everything looked fine. And yet, the air inside felt different, heavier, warmer. She noticed a small recorder on the bedside table, its red recording light blinking steadily. "Oh," she said softly. "What is it?" Owen stepped closer, peering over her shoulder. Jenna tilted her head toward the device. "Someone's recording. Already? That's unusual. No one is supposed to start recording yet. Not without orders." Owen frowned. Could be a previous transcriptionist left it running. Maybe a patient request. "Maybe," Jenna said, though she didn't believe it. The feeling of wrongness persisted, prickling along her skin. She glanced around the room, noting details, an unmarked chart on the counter, the faint scuff of shoes along the linoleum, the slightly askew pillow. Normal, everyday things. Yet something about them felt slightly out of place, just enough to gnaw at her sense of reason. "I'll check the charts," Owen muttered, moving toward the nurse call panel. "You check the recorder." Jenna nodded, hesitating. Her fingers hovered over the small device, then she pressed play. A voice filled the room, not loud, not dramatic, just ordinary. A man speaking, but not to anyone in the room, narrating things that didn't quite make sense yet. She frowned. Owen cleared his throat. Should we call someone?" Jenna shook her head. "No, not yet. Let's just see what's going on." Her pulse quickened, a quiet thrum in her ears. Something about that room, the subtle deviations from normalcy, the quiet insistence of the recording, made her stomach twist. She knew she'd remember this moment. Remember walking in, noticing the slight imperfection, and deciding not to step back. Owen glanced at her, eyebrows raised. "You're really doing this?" She nodded again. "We need to know." And with that, the decision was made. They would investigate room 6, not out of recklessness, not out of bravado, but out of a quiet, stubborn need to understand the small breaks from reality that whispered insistently that something was off. Jenna's fingers hovered over the recorder, but she hesitated. The voice was faint now, almost mundane, just counting vitals and medications in a clipped, monotonous tone. She glanced up at Owen. "It's not a patient's voice, at least not one of ours." Owen frowned, packing slowly. Could be someone new, a temp maybe, or a contractor. They do bring in outside people for equipment checks sometimes. Contractors don't just set up a recorder in a patient's room without authorization, Jenna said, feeling the edge in her voice. She hated breaking rules, hated being the one to cause trouble, but she also hated leaving things unresolved. That urge, her need to fix anomalies, was always stronger than her fear. And tonight, it pushed her into the room. She stepped closer, listening. The recorder crackled faintly. Then the voice came again, low and deliberate. Vitals stable. Nothing unusual yet. Waiting for response. Owen froze mid-step, waiting for response. "That's what I heard," Jenna said, furrowing her brow. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled. "It doesn't make sense." A sudden clang from the hallway made them both jump. A cart had toppled over somewhere near the nurse's station. Footsteps followed, fast, but distant. Normal hospital noise, but the timing, it sharpened their nerves. Owen rubbed his eyes, muttering under his breath, "I don't like this. Something's off." "You don't have to like it," Jenna snapped, softer than she intended. She took a deep breath. "We need to check the room, the chart, the recorder. One of us has to." Owen shook his head. "I'm telling you, Jenna, I shouldn't be the first in. You're better with details. You see what others miss. I trust you more in situations like this." She gave him a tight smile, but her stomach twisted. She hated it when people relied on her like. That made her responsible for outcomes she couldn't control. That fear of failing, of letting someone down, tightened around her chest like a tourniquet. "Fine," she said finally, stepping fully into room 6. The air felt warmer, denser, and the smell, the faint sweetness, was more noticeable. She glanced at the bed. Still empty, still made, still normal. But now the recording felt wrong in a way she couldn't articulate. Owen followed reluctantly, keeping a hand near the door. "Check the panel. Check everything," he murmured. "I'll watch the hallway." Jenna nodded and moved to the bedside chart. It was blank odd, because a patient should have updates by now. She flipped it open carefully. No notes. No vitals logged. Only the nurse's signature from the previous shift. "Okay," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "This is weird." Suddenly, the recorder beeped differently, a short, rapid tone, and then cut out entirely. She tapped it. Dead. No lights. Nothing. "Great," Owen said, exhaling sharply. "Battery malfunction." "Maybe," Jenna said, but she felt a cold knot of apprehension. Devices didn't just die mid-recording unless someone tampered with them, or they weren't meant to be there in the first place. "Should we call security?" Owen asked. He had an edge to his voice now, the kind that came when he didn't know the right answer and didn't want anyone to see it. Jenna hesitated. Calling security could escalate things, but staying quiet, investigating meant she was the first to discover what had been recorded. Her private fear of being blamed, of making the wrong call, pressed down on her. She didn't want responsibility, yet she felt trapped by it. "Let's check the cameras first," she said finally. "Maybe the hall footage will show who went in or out of this room. Maybe it's nothing serious." Owen nodded, following her lead, though his steps were cautious, deliberate. They moved down the hall to the nurse's station. Jenna swiped the access card, and the security monitor flickered to life. Grainy footage of the corridor played back in slow loops. Most of it was empty. A cart rolled by at one point. Someone's shoe appeared briefly, a staff member, but it didn't match the voice from the recording. "Where'd it go?" Owen asked, leaning over her shoulder. Jenna squinted. The angle didn't cover room 6's doorway entirely, just the edge of it. But she could see shadows shifting, subtle, unidentifiable movements. "That's not good," she said, more to herself than him. Owen pinched the bridge of his nose. "We should call someone now. Admin, security, anyone. This isn't normal." Jenna felt the knot in her chest tighten again. "And admit we walked in without authorization. That we found a device we weren't supposed to." She could feel her pulse quicken. She hated confrontation. She hated being wrong, but she hated ignoring anomalies even more. Footsteps echoed sharply down the corridor, closer this time. They weren't fast, not exactly running, but purposeful. Owen's head snapped up. Someone's coming. Jenna froze. Do we stay, or do we leave? The sound of keys jingling, followed by a voice loud, annoyed, unfamiliar, made them both stiffen. "Jenna, Owen, what the hell are you two doing?" They turned to see Nurse Kelsey Matthews, mid-30s, brisk and efficient, pushing a supply cart. She frowned, noticing the open door to room 6 and the two standing there. "The patient in room 6 isn't scheduled until tomorrow morning." Why is that door open?" Before either of them could respond, Jenna's gaze flicked back to the bedside table. The recorder had reactivated on its own. A red light blinked steadily. Neither of them had touched it. Owen whispered, "That's impossible." Jenna swallowed hard. The pulse of unease she'd been ignoring all evening rose sharply. Their small decision to investigate had now escalated. Not just protocol breach, but a device behaving strangely, movement in the hallway, and a nurse about to demand answers they weren't ready to give. They were caught between leaving and facing reprimand, or staying and digging further into a problem that could be much bigger than either of them realized. Jenna realized she had no easy option, and the longer she stared at that blinking light, the more certain she became that walking away now wasn't going to solve anything. Jenna's eyes stayed locked on the blinking recorder, but she could feel Owen behind her, shifting nervously from foot to foot in the narrow space between the bed and the wall. The hospital corridor outside was dimly lit. The soft hum of the ventilation system, a low undertone to the occasional squeak of a cart rolling down the linoleum. They were trapped between curiosity and protocol, and the air felt thicker with every passing second. "Let's get this on a laptop," Jenna said finally, trying to sound decisive. "If we can isolate the audio, maybe we can figure out who it is or what they're doing." Owen nodded, and they moved quickly down the corridor toward the small IT room on the east wing, near the staff lounge. Jenna clutched the recorder tightly, aware of every echo of their footsteps. The hum of the lights overhead seemed louder, irregular, almost as if it pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. When they reached the IT room, they hit the first roadblock. The laptop Owen grabbed was nearly dead, its battery warning flashing urgently. Jenna tried connecting the recorder, but the device wasn't recognized. "It's like it's encrypted or malfunctioning," she muttered, frustration tightening her jaw. "Could be proprietary," Owen said, frowning. "Some devices are weird like that. But why would someone leave it in an empty patient room?" Before Jenna could respond, the intercom buzzed, and Nurse Matthews's voice came through, sharp and impatient. "Owen, Jenna, status update. I need that room secured." Jenna's stomach sank. They couldn't explain this yet, not without drawing attention to the blinking recorder, the empty chart, or the shadowy hallway movements. "We're on it," Owen replied. His voice wavered slightly. Jenna ran her hands through her hair. "We need a second attempt. Maybe we can just check the footage on the cameras near room 6 again, closer this time." They slipped back down the corridor, careful not to attract attention. Jenna's pulse was high, every step along the linoleum floor making a faint echo that sounded louder than it should. When they reached the wall-mounted monitors, she leaned close to the grainy screens. The angle from earlier still didn't show the whole doorway, but now they caught a flash, something moving inside the room, subtle, just at the edge of the doorframe. "Did you see that?" she whispered, heart pounding. Owen squinted. "It's maybe a shadow from the cart in the hall. Look, the lights are flickering." Jenna shook her head, unwilling to let herself be reassured. Something moved deliberately behind the half-closed door. A sleeve, a glint of metal. She pressed rewind and slow-played the footage again. Her stomach sank. It wasn't a hallucination. Something or someone had been inside room 6. They looked at each other, and Owen muttered, "Okay, that's not good." Attempt number 2. Return to room 6 and confront the recorder directly. Jenna led the way. She opened the door just enough to slip inside, the recorder still blinking, steady red. Her fingers hovered above it. She noticed a faint scuff on the floor near the bedside table, a small footprint smeared slightly. Someone had been there recently. Before she could react, a loud bang echoed from the supply closet down the hall. They both jumped, spinning toward the sound. Owen's hand brushed against the corner of the wall. A slight scrape drew a thin line of blood across his palm. He winced, but kept moving. "What was that?" he whispered. "Probably a cart," Jenna said, though the unease in her voice betrayed her. "The closet door isn't fully latched." They both paused, ears straining. The sound of something dragging along the linoleum floor made their stomachs twist. It wasn't fast, not urgent, but deliberate, a slow scraping. Jenna swallowed hard, her palms clammy. She forced herself to step toward the bedside table. The recorder had stopped blinking. "Dead." "Great," Owen muttered. "Now it's off again." Jenna bent closer. Then a shadow fell across the doorway. A figure, just a silhouette, loomed, and her heart leapt into her throat. She gripped the recorder tightly. "Who's there?" Owen's voice was low but sharp. The figure moved back quickly, and in the dim overhead light, she realized it wasn't a person. A tall coat rack in the corner had fallen over, the long shadows of jackets and bags creating the illusion of a human presence. Her shoulders slumped, tension easing slightly, though the adrenaline still coursed through her. "God, my eyes," Jenna muttered, rubbing them. Owen chuckled tensely. Good thing it wasn't real. They regrouped, breathless, and Jenna set the recorder on the bed. She noticed a small piece of tape on the back of it. A label, handwritten, "Do not remove." She frowned. Whoever left this wanted it preserved or watched. Time was slipping. They knew someone could arrive at any moment, yet the recorder had offered no clues. Attempt number 2 had failed, and it had left them physically tense and mentally frayed. Attempt number 3. Isolate the device using their phones as temporary recorders, trying to capture audio directly before the original stopped again. Jenna placed her phone near the recorder. She pressed record and leaned back slightly, heart hammering. A faint crackle emerged, almost inaudible at first. Then a voice, low, deliberate, clipped. "Vitals stable." Nothing unusual yet. Waiting for response. Jenna froze. She realized the voice wasn't narrating the room, it was responding to something. Someone or something was waiting, and they were listening. Owen's hand touched her shoulder. "We can't keep doing this," he whispered. "If someone's watching, they'll know we're here." Jenna's chest tightened. Retreating now would mean leaving unanswered questions, leaving evidence in place for someone unknown. She realized with sudden clarity there was no turning back. They had committed. Any hesitation, any delay, could mean they'd be caught unaware, or worse, their chance to understand the recorder's purpose would vanish. A distant voice echoed in the corridor, security rounding the corner, keys jingling, footsteps deliberate. Jenna's eyes darted to the window in the door. No escape routes. Her mind raced, pulse thrumming in her ears. The recorder continued its faint, persistent narration. Jenna and Owen exchanged a look, silent understanding passing between them. Whatever was happening in room 6, whatever the recorder was documenting, they were in it now, fully. And nothing about the room, the shadows, the device, or the hallway made it safe to leave. Jenna and Owen crouched just inside room 6, pressed close to the bed. The recorder's faint, clipped voice continued, steady and unnervingly deliberate. Vitals stable. Nothing unusual yet. Waiting for response. The corridor outside had gone silent. Too silent. Every sound, the hum of ventilation, the faint squeak of a cart in a distant hallway felt amplified, underscoring the tension that clawed at Jenna's chest. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the recorder. She realized the voice had shifted tone subtly. There were now pauses between each phrase, almost like someone was listening, waiting for them to act. "They're monitoring it," Owen whispered. His hand rested against the doorframe, smeared with dried blood from the earlier scrape. "Whoever set this up, they know we're here." Jenna's stomach twisted. The room no longer felt like a safe, sterile environment. The faint sweetness in the air seemed more pungent now, almost suffocating. She swallowed hard. "Then we need to end this, figure out what it's recording, and get out." Owen nodded. "We improvise. We don't wait for permission. Just do it." She edged closer to the bedside table. The recorder's blinking light taunted her. Then she saw it. The small piece of tape on the back, the handwritten warning, "Do not remove." Her instincts screamed at her, but curiosity, drenched in terror, overrode caution. "Ready?" she asked. Owen nodded. "On 3. They lifted the recorder together. But at that exact moment, the door handle rattled violently. Jenna yelped. Footsteps pounded the corridor. Someone was coming fast, heavy, deliberate. Owen shoved the recorder into his bag. "Hide," he snapped. They dove behind the bed, flattening against the wall. The door opened abruptly, and a man stepped in. He was tall, lean, dressed in hospital maintenance clothes, with a clipboard tucked under one arm. His expression was calm but purposeful. "Who's in here?" the man demanded. Jenna's pulse raced. Every muscle tensed. Her voice barely emerged. We thought the room was scheduled." He waved a hand. No patients here, but you shouldn't be handling that." He pointed at the recorder. "Leave it, please." Owen stood slowly, hands raised. "We just wanted to see what it was, why it was recording." The man's eyes flicked to the floor, then back at them. "You really don't understand, do you?" he sighed. "This isn't for the patients. Not yet. It's a trial. Internal study, staff behavior, workflow efficiency, everything monitored." Jenna blinked, trying to process. "A study." "Yes," he said, voice tight. "But it's not approved for public access. Nobody's supposed to touch it. It's sensitive." A flicker of relief surged through her, immediately tangled with lingering fear. The stress, the adrenaline, the sense of intrusion. They hadn't been in danger from a malicious person, but the consequences were still real. Policy violations, potential disciplinary action, the weight of having handled something they weren't meant to touch. "Okay," Owen said cautiously. "We'll put it back." The man gestured. "Not just anywhere, on the table, exactly as you found it." As they set the recorder down, a small misstep, Jenna's heel catching on the edge of the bed, sent it sliding slightly. The red light flickered, then stabilized. The man's jaw tightened, a warning in his eyes. Jenna froze, heart hammering. "Careful," he said. They corrected it, and the recorder sat upright once more. Silence filled the room, except for the faint voice continuing its mechanical monitoring. Jenna's palms were damp. She could feel the tremor in Owen's hands as he rubbed at his scraped palm, already beginning to sting again. Finally, the man turned. "You shouldn't have come in here. If anyone asks, explain nothing. Understand? Yes, Jenna whispered. Owen nodded. We understand. He left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. The corridor hummed back to its normal rhythm, yet the room felt hollow. The recorder continued, impersonal and steady, but the immediate threat had vanished. Jenna slumped against the wall, letting out a shuddering breath. Her chest ached, tight from tension. That could have gone much worse, she murmured. Owen sank to the floor, wincing as he flexed his hand. We're lucky. But he rubbed his temples, voice low. I don't know if I'll ever want to hear a monitor voice again. Jenna let out a weak laugh, though it felt hollow. We got out. That's the point. We did what we could with what we knew. They remained quiet for a moment, listening to the faint, mundane voice of the recorder. Safe, but changed. The room wasn't dangerous in the way she had imagined. It was the tension, the unknown, the weight of responsibility and mistakes that had left its mark. Eventually, Jenna stood, shoulders stiff. We should leave, go back to the nurse's station. Explain we were checking something small, maybe a protocol detail gone wrong. Let them handle it. Owen nodded, agreed, let's move. But even as they walked down the corridor, every footstep echoed differently now, heavier somehow. The sweetness in the air lingered faintly, an olfactory memory of fear. Jenna realized she would replay this night in her mind repeatedly, the minor injuries, the flashing lights, the misread shadow, the voice, and that unbearable tension of not knowing if someone or something was watching. And though the immediate danger was gone, they carried with them a new wariness. Rooms that seemed empty might not be. Devices that seemed mundane could hold secrets. And their own instincts, the need to investigate, to resolve, would forever be tinged with a memory of adrenaline, uncertainty, and the very real possibility of risk. They exited room 6. The corridor was now just a corridor again, sterile and humming. But they both knew it would never feel the same. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor had returned to their usual hum. To any casual observer, the evening shift was progressing normally. Nurses rolling carts, monitors beeping, a steady shuffle of footsteps echoing in linoleum halls. Yet for Jenna and Owen, the world had shifted imperceptibly along a fault line they could feel in their bones. They returned to the nurse's station, heads low, moving as if trying to blend in. Owen's hand was wrapped loosely in a clean bandage, the scrape still stinging with each movement. Jenna's shoulders were tight, her chest still carrying the ghost of adrenaline. Nurse Matthews looked up from her paperwork, eyebrows raised. Everything all right? Jenna forced a smile, careful, professional. Minor issue with room 6's equipment. Checked the chart, nothing critical. All handled. Owen nodded. Just routine protocol verification. The nurse's frown eased, though suspicion lingered. She didn't push. Hospitals ran on trust, and those who broke it were watched closely, but not interrogated immediately. Jenna let out a quiet sigh once they were out of view. "I can't believe how worked up I got over a recorder." Owen rubbed his face. "You weren't overreacting. That room, that device, it felt off for a reason. It's the not knowing that gets to you." She nodded, thinking about the recorder's red blinking light, the faint voice, the shadows she had misinterpreted, the sudden pounding of footsteps in the hallway. Her chest tightened again, and she realized she replay those moments repeatedly, a mental loop she couldn't quite break. Over the next hour, they completed their remaining rounds, avoiding room 6, letting it sit quiet and innocuous behind the door. Each step along the corridor reminded them that something as ordinary as a hospital room could become a source of terror when normalcy fractured. Later, back in the break room, Owen sipped lukewarm coffee, flexing his hand gingerly. "I can feel that scrape more than I thought I would," he muttered. "And the stress, I didn't expect it to linger like this." Jenna stirred her tea silently. She could feel her palms still damp, a faint tremor lingering in her fingers. "I keep thinking about that voice," she admitted quietly. "The way it paused like it was waiting, not dangerous, but aware." Owen looked at her, expression softening. "We did everything we could. No patients were harmed. No one was malicious. We followed through and survived it intact." "Yes," she agreed, yet her mind raced. Even with the explanation, an internal study, the combination of the unknown, the potential for misinterpretation, and the procedural risk had left them both changed. The hospital was a place of control, schedules, protocols. And yet, they had felt utterly powerless for 20 minutes, trapped by a simple machine and the ambiguity of human intent. That powerlessness lingered as a quiet, gnawing hum. By the time they clocked out, the corridor was near empty. Night had fallen fully, the dim exterior light seeping through the high windows, casting long shadows across the floor. They walked silently toward the exit. Jenna's bag hung heavily on her shoulder, her steps deliberate. Owen's stride was slower than usual, each step measured. Outside, the cool air was a relief, sharp against flushed skin. Jenna inhaled deeply, letting the crispness fill her lungs. For a moment, the tension eased. The city was quiet, normal even, the streets bathed in the soft glow of street lamps. And yet, she couldn't shake the image of the recorder's blinking light. She remembered the label, "Do not remove." The thought that someone had left it there, intentionally, monitoring events, stayed lodged in her mind. It was explained now, but somehow the reasoning did not entirely erase the uncertainty. What if there were other devices, other rooms? Owen's phone buzzed. He glanced down a message from his wife, checking if he was on his way home. He typed a quick reply, but his mind lingered on the scrape, the tension, the moments of unknowing. His confidence felt slightly frayed, not broken, but rearranged. Jenna caught a glimpse of the hospital behind them as they walked to their cars. Room 6 sat quietly in the distance, door closed, everything apparently normal. Yet she felt a small shiver, a whisper of doubt that perhaps some part of the room's purpose had been missed, overlooked, or misinterpreted. Something minor, trivial, or perhaps not. The drive home was quiet. Jenna kept her hands on the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. Owen was silent in the passenger seat, eyes on the passing streetlights. Words felt unnecessary. Their shared tension hung in the car like an invisible weight. When she pulled into her driveway, Jenna sat for a moment in the car, engine off, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes wide and tired. The adrenaline had faded, leaving something sharper. A thin edge of unease, a reminder that control was often an illusion, and routine could hide hazards she had never anticipated. Owen followed in his car, parking across the street. They exchanged a glance, one that spoke volumes. They had survived the night. No one was physically harmed beyond minor scratches and bruised nerves. Yet, in that glance, lay the acknowledgement that the world could feel ordinary, while harboring fractures that only revealed themselves in small, terrifying doses. Inside her apartment, Jenna locked the door behind her and sank onto the couch. She could hear the city outside cars, distant sirens, the faint hum of streetlights, but her mind traced the sound of the recorder, the mechanical cadence of the voice, the slight hesitation in each phrase. She told herself it was over, that it had been explained, yet she couldn't entirely silence the memory of being observed, of things happening just outside her line of sight. Owen arrived moments later at his apartment, dropping his bag on the floor. He flexed his hand again, wincing slightly. He went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood staring out the window at the night. That small trace of vigilance, the one that had saved them, remained, a quiet echo of the tension they had endured. Somewhere in the back of both their minds, a single thread remained unresolved. The blinking recorder, the label, the subtle pauses in the voice, and the sense that someone, somewhere, was watching. It was no longer immediate, no longer dangerous, but it was there, dormant, a quiet reminder that the ordinary could fracture in ways they might never fully anticipate. And with that lingering unease, the night ended. The hospital was quiet. The streets were calm. Life returned to its ordinary rhythm. But Jenna and Owen knew, silently, that ordinary would never quite feel the same again.